Okay, I wanted to make a quick video here to show how you might enter polar form of complex numbers into the spreadsheet iteration tool. So what I have on the screen right now is a version of the iteration tool, and remember the way we constructed it here is you could put a rule in for the complex number, but you have to enter it in rectangular form. So you can see here, like in cell B3, I could put a 2 and a 1, and that represents the complex number 2 plus I. I believe that most of you guys got to the point where you were wishing that you could put polar form of numbers in. For example, you might have said, oh, in one of these I want to do something like 0.95 cis, whatever, we'll call it 121 degrees. That's the number you want to use as your iteration rule. And then you might have found yourself either pulling out your calculator to figure out how to convert this thing to rectangular, because that's what the spreadsheet wants. On your calculator, you might have done something like, well, the A term has to be 0.95 times the cosine of 121 degrees, and then the B coefficient is 0.95 times the sine of 121 degrees, and then you'd punch those into your calculator, and then come back to the spreadsheet and enter those into these two cells. I wanted to just show you like a quick technique about how you, two ways you might think about making your spreadsheet do the work for you. That's one of the great things about spreadsheets, is it does the work for you. One idea here is if you come up to the rule section, and instead of just typing the number 2, you can actually type a little formula here to have it just do the calculation. So like for that example, I could put an equal sign here, and then I could actually literally type the number 0.95 times cosine, and then I do left paren. Now recall that the cosine function in Excel requires radians as its input, so you can't just type 121 here because that's the degree version of it. So we can actually use that function radians, which will convert degrees to radians. So what I'm going to put inside the cosine function here is the radians of 121, and I'm going to close the parenthesis here. And if I did, looks like I have an error here. Radians, I forgot the S there. There we go. Radians, and then so that actually do the calculation for you right in the spreadsheet. And then I could do the same thing here, equals 0.95 times, now this time it's the sine radians of 121, right paren. And that would go ahead and give me the equivalent without having to write anything down on paper or do anything on the calculator. And let me take that maybe even one step further. I'm going to go ahead and just highlight this and insert a row here to give myself a little bit of space. But one thing you could do is say rule polar. Well, actually, that won't work so well. Actually, yeah, that's fine. I'll do it here. I'm going to call it R and theta. Give them little labels above the top here. And then we'll call this rule polar. And then what I can do is just type in numbers into these cells, like 0.95 and 121 degrees. So I can use this as my input. And then, although currently right now my spreadsheet is linked to my rule up here in the blue, what I can do is I can actually change this formula here to reference my two inputs that I put down below. So instead I could say equals, now instead of typing 0.95, I'm going to pick the cell where I typed 0.95, which is B5, times cosine radians. Same idea here, but now I'm going to, and then I'll put C5 because that's where the degrees are listed. And you'll see I get the same answer here, but now it's linked to these two cells in B5 and C5. And let's do the same thing here. I'm going to replace the 0.95 with 0.95 gets replaced with the cell, what the entry in B5 is, and then the 121 radians is going to get replaced with C5, which is the value there. Again, same thing, no change. But now here, look what I can do. If I come down to B5, I can just type in, well, if I wanted to try a radius of 1.02, type in 1.02, and it automatically changes my iteration rule up here. And that's the picture I get with 102. Now let's say I wanted to try out 101. I could come back up to that cell. I'm sorry, 1.01. 1.01 is the radius. Type that in, and boom, it instantly does it for me. So that's really why you want to use spreadsheets in these contexts, is because you can try new scenarios really quickly if you program your spreadsheet the right way. You know, if I want to change the angle here to 119, I could just type that in, see what it does, and get a new picture. Okay, so that was really the one thing I wanted to just show in terms of helping your spreadsheet, or making your spreadsheet even more user-friendly if you find yourself wishing you could be inputting R's and thetas instead of A's and B's to make your spreadsheet create the polar, or the orbits of the graphs of the orbits. Oh, quickly, one more thing too is if I believe some of you wish you could have added more rows into your orbit. So maybe you ended it here like at 24. Now my version here goes all the way down to 100, but let's say I wanted to make mine go to 150. I come down to the end, and creating 50 more orbits is as simple as highlighting all these rows at one time and just dragging down to copy 50 times. 50 rows, let's see, that got me to 134. Drag down. Okay, that's 147. Gets me, let's see, get 3 more here. All right, so I've just added 50 more rows into the orbit. And so now I have all the data for the extra rows. Now I just have to go to the graph to tell the graph to graph more points. Actually, the way I set up my spreadsheet here is I had one graph that graphed the first 20 points, and then I had another graph that graphed the first 50 points. Let's say I wanted to change this graph to graph 100 points now. So I just select the graph. So I have the graph selected, and then these design elements come up across the top. Again, this is with the full version of Excel. I think there's similar commands in the online version. You just have to find where they go. But essentially, you come to the select data button. That's the data that's getting graphed. See how it says change the data range included in the chart? I'll click on that. And here I get I'm presented with, it's graphing series 1, which is what's in column B and C, and I'm just going to edit that. And then I can add more rows. So if I click into here, you can see that it's graphing through B57. Oops, sorry about that. Also, really what I want to do here is just replace these series X and series Y values with the new set of rows. One way to do that is just to click on this little spot here and go back to the spreadsheet and then highlight what I want to do. So here I'm going to highlight 100 rows of data instead of 50. And so my X values now have 100 rows instead of 50. Highlight that, click enter. Okay, well, I'm not sure why it doesn't like that. Let's see. I have to clear it out before I do that. Sorry about that. All right, so I'll clear it out. Now I can go ahead and select the range. I'm picking the first, let's say 150 rows just for fun. Let's do 150. So I select all of them there. And then I can come to here and then do the same thing, clear this out. Hit the little box there. And then I'm going to go to the Y values, and I want 150 my Y values, which are the imaginary pieces. Edit that, say OK. Say OK. And now if I come over to the graph where I used to have 50, it'll have 150 orbits. So you can see that picture is actually kind of cool looking with 150 points graphed right there. Okay, so those are 2 little tricks here, how to get more points in your graph and how to make the input of iteration rules in polar form done more simply.